Hello to Leo. Welcome to your new moon astrology forecast. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. Oh, wow. Leo, welcome to your new moon astrology forecast. This is going to look at the main astrological themes for the Leo new moon up to our Aquarius full moon, which is going to be on the 11th of August. So this forecast is primarily addressing Leo rising, Leo sun, and Leo moon, but truly anybody that has fixed sign energy in the first 10 degrees is going to feel this new moon in one way or the other. And we'll go into all of the specifics about that. And also, too, just know, Leo, that when we get to the Aquarius full moon, even though that forecast is going to be for Aquarius, you already have a sense of how everything has led up to that point. And so you can still utilize that full moon forecast when we get there to give yourself a sense of how to proceed after a culmination. Because Leo, if there's any takeaway here after spending some time with this chart for the new moon in general, but especially for you, is that as much as you want to be, the sole provider of the illumination in your life, as much as you want to almost just do it by yourself, Saturn in your seventh in Aquarius has been pretty relentless in terms of an anchor. And even in its retrograde now, it is a very strong force field that is so strongly now. It's almost like the gravity and the pressure and the density of Saturn representing the materium of itself, and certainly representing the strength and the power of the collective resonance that Aquarius represents. It's turned inward in a way that the pressure is starting to really become noticeable within the individual. So Saturn for a while now has been making this very unavoidable, right? It is the foot being put down in a lot of ways. It is the cosmic time clock ticking along that is kind of unavoidable. And to have Saturn, we have Mercury here. There is this grand square that you can see on the outsides here at this new moon moment. Venus and Lilith, these two feminine figures in conjunction with the star Sirius, something we've talked a lot about in the Catalyst Classroom over the last month, which is our subscriber base. And also, too, the fact that we're going to have Sirius rising and the Lionsgate portal during this 2 weeks during your forecast report. And so there's a lot going on, and this grand square that is part of it, especially because it is along the angular houses for you, which means that it's along the axis of your identity, the axis of your power. All of the fixed signs are going to go through this based on where they find themselves positioned, especially the rising signs. Boy, oh boy, but this is something we don't get out of, right? The only way out of something like a grand square is through, right? You have to just realize that you are encased in this structure that is almost like the force field that Saturn is representing in Aquarius right now, and is in fact part of this grand square. But this also keeps us in our lane, right? This is a challenge that has been that is meant to be confronted and addressed. And if you find yourself frustrated, just like everyone else is going to, with this grand square, just know that that's part of the learning process, is the frustration, because what it does is gives us all the impetus to actually confront the challenge, to solve the problem, to grow as a result of all of this resistance. And like I said, the only way out is through. And this grand square, along with this new moon in Leo, is going to, it's going to be the brick wall that we're all going to be facing together. And the great thing about this new moon, as much as that is a difficult scenario to behold, is that this new moon really sets the tone for all of us, but especially you, Leo, because it is right into who you are, how you identify yourself, the nature of your internal landscape, your subjective experience, that things like fashion, social morals, when it comes down to it, those are all relative, right? And even this idea that even the things that seem like that they are actually more formed into a larger social pattern of meaning, it is really relative when it comes to the nature of the human experience, right? The voice that we all have, right? The nature of our brilliance, our illumination, our creativity, our expression of our divine source through Leo, our passion, right? Our sense of confidence. For you, Leo, it's in your identity that every costume that you want to put on as the performer in your own play, which truly the Leo person is in every shape and form, is the personality that is the center, and the performer, the drama in, gets such a bad rap, but I'm talking about the drama that we all relate to, and the Leo person having the capacity to really pull that through themselves, and in that process hold the resonance of the collective experience, right? That is Aquarius, in a way that's truly masterful. And Leo, whether you like it or not, Saturn's like, we're mastering this, right? We are going to become a disciplined, well-oiled, completely up to speed, masterful performer of this great social consciousness, or to be an ambassador of the collective resonance. And it's not been easy, because it requires a sense of detaching from your own ego and what you want. And as much as you want, Leo, to be able to do it all yourself and to be the only brilliant spot in your life, there's something here that is going to upset, your houseboat party in some ways, right? Especially in the mind, right? The mind really wanting to release from social rigidity. And there's something very powerful about this in terms of who you are. There is a really strong connection in this whole story to what's happening over in the ninth house with Chiron and Jupiter. So we're going to explore that as we go through this, because as you see, Jupiter is also stationed retrograde in the ninth house at the moment of this new moon. Venus and Lilith are conjunct Sirius. This is your 12th house. This is Cancer. This has been something over the last month that has been relatively unseen, but very much felt, and is along multi-dimensional layers, possibly past life, certainly past karma of situations, because the 12th house is truly where this all comes together, and we find ourselves surrendering to the flow of what is. And that takes a lot of forms, and oftentimes comes about as a result of some sort of spiritual or social isolation. You may find yourself in a hospital and healing, and a lot of Akashic record type of stuff, like really getting into the soul's journey and the larger pattern that has unfolded as a result of many lifetimes. But this is the result of all of our choices and the societal and relational creations as a result. So there's something here beyond even what you imagined as your family, right? Cancer is about where the nurturing and protection and boundaries come from in the 12th house. It is the vessel that holds the waters of our soul, and is the womb that holds the growing life, right? Is the root system that stabilizes the growing plant. It is the boat in a lot of ways that takes us across the ocean. And Leo, what this I feel like is doing for you, this really, with Lilith here and of course the new moon here, I think it's been very difficult to really get a handle on who it is that you have been growing into, wanting to grow into, but now there is this sense of regardless of who you've been, right? It's all a costume. And you can just as easily switch out your costume in order to really find yourself when you tell the story. You can tell a new story about yourself. You can be a new figure in this larger process that we call life, an experience that we call life. It is about the experience. And there's something about connecting spiritually and transcendentally when it comes to the 12th house, within your feels, within your sense of primal, deep preservation, and then with Venus as well in Cancer, to something that is changeless, something that is infinite, something that is in itself transcendent by going so deep that you realize that it's through the depth and the void that we realize the core of who we are. This takes you into a place that if you kind of just, I would say trust this and really having given yourself the opportunity to deeply explore this area, or at least be sensitive to it as we have gone through an entire lunar cycle in Cancer, I feel like that this will allow you to, through meaning, through value, through relationships, through a sense of harmony and beauty with Venus, and then of course that dark void within ourselves that Lilith represents, tapping into something that's infinite. Because when you do this, it's going to really allow for you as a person here, a personality here, to realize that your personality can just be, in a lot of ways, you can put on a new costume, you can put on a new you can put on a new suit. And it takes a realization that these types of things are relative to the authentic and true voice of who you are. What you put on top of it, what costume, I know I keep saying it, but it is like the perfect analogy to realize. And this is because meaning is going to really start changing for you. And that's the 9th house. So we'll get to that. The other thing is that Mercury is in this T-square. In fact, there is this large grand square, as we talked about. But Mercury in particular is in a direct square, T-square, with the nodes on this day. And also it looks like, with the nodes and Uranus, okay? So while the mind for you, Leo, has been really addressing and directed towards who you are, why you are, how you are, right? Doing the mental and cognitive work in terms of identity, getting to this point where you're starting to feel kind of like, okay, I can dig this, right? It's the mind has become this not fully detached, but also released in a lot of ways from like social rigidity about who you are, who you present yourself to be, right? That it is much more of a fluid and almost bohemian type of experience. And it's this T-square, number 1. And it's really all part of this grand square, honestly, that is the axis of your power, especially in terms of the crystallization, the career, the mission, your public life, right? Your professional pursuits here in the 10th house is undergoing and soon to just have all of this brand new space really suddenly, very deeply, and with some real force, it's going to get created. And this has to do with Uranus and the north node of the moon and Mars all coming into this triple conjunction within, a day's worth, right? August 1st into August 2nd. And so this may disrupt and certainly is going to challenge, how your mind is kind of like on this houseboat in terms of who you are. You're kind of getting, comfortable with the lack of responsibility and just kind of having fun with yourself and realizing, when there is such a drastic shift in the underwater landscape that a new continent comes out of the ocean, and especially when that is impacting what you are here to do professionally or publicly or in your mission, boy, oh boy, that's going to probably capsize your boat here. Now, what else is happening is that this energy of the South Node, which is really between this and Pluto up until recently, has been the only energy at the bottom of your chart. So much of the focus, like I said, up until recently, has been on your social identity and your social expression. With Pluto, having its Pluto effect of just digging up all the grime and all of the rot and like exposing it and pulling it away, and eliminating it in terms of what you're actually doing with yourself. Like your everyday activities, like where are your resources going, and how are you actually using them? And that's a direct function of what? Your fourth house, because this is where your root system is. So the good news is the South Node of Scorpio, if you can see it as your momentum towards the release of your power in a very public and mission-oriented way, is, as much as it's squaring everything, it is, in fact, at this moment, allowing you to at least tap into a deep personal power of channelship to, through the collective, right? This is where, Leo, if you start to realize that, by the time you get to the third house, it starts to shift into Libra, Scorpio, Sag, Capricorn. These are about the social and relational experiences, not just the individual. So right here, your fourth house being Scorpio really does show that the personal power, the root system of the Leo person, is really drawn from the waters of our collective contribution, and really getting at the urge to really go deeper, to have a more perfect union, to have a deeper connection, to generate more power. There's something that is so dark and is also so powerful to the Leo person, and to use this as, again, this ability to project out, and it's projecting out in a way or momentum, moving the soul towards evolution in a way where there's Mars and Uranus coming together. And I did just listen to some space weather update from Suspicious Observers, if you're familiar with them. And I've been thinking the same thing, that we are long overdue for a very large quake. And in terms of what the solar activity and the geoelectric circuitry of our around our planet has been, there should be more. And if there was ever a large quake configuration, it would be Mars and Uranus in the sign of Taurus, especially in a degree that literally means a new continent. So does that mean that that's going to be directly related to your career? Maybe, right? Because perhaps it's going to create it's just going to blow the entire establishment that you are part of out of the water, to the point where the soul is going to be able to have a clean slate. This may be very disruptive, but it's actually going to be exactly what's needed. Now, again, the discipline of these situations that develops as a result of the challenges of them, in terms of who you are in the social relationship, this is going to be probably one of the bigger sticking points, but at the same time is going to be kind of like the thing. It's almost like Uranus and Mars are going to be the trigger, and it's going to be weighted towards, if you see this grand square, it starts spinning on a center axis, clockwise. Imagine that this is the trigger, and it starts spinning it like a fan, and it's going to go towards, I feel like in this I don't know why I'm visualizing it this way, but this is where it's coming through, towards this Saturn. And yes, it's going to disrupt the train of thought, basically, and the medium of expression about yourself in a way that is going to be possibly very destabilizing in terms of where you've come to about yourself so far. But this is why the new moon about relativity of these social values is so important. This is a moment to set intention here about you as a person, Leo, to not be attached to all of the costumes that have been put on, that you have put on, and to, but at the same time, realize that you can't just do it all yourself. Without an audience, who are you? And that's what the seventh house really represents. And Aquarius for you is your relationships. Now, this can be the relationship to an audience. This could be a relationship to your loved ones, your spouse, your business partners, your clients, your customers, your boss, whatever it is, right? It can change, but it is in the experience itself and what it brings forward in terms of responsibility and a sense of power and structure in your relationships that is really going to be kind of the driving force here, okay? But you have to be willing to kind of let go of the old identity and the old costumes that you have been wearing. So when you're used to having this mental and certainly very expressive experience when it comes to who you are, or you just being kind of like, I always see kind of like the Mercury in Leo person, especially in the first house type of energy, to just be kind of like the host of this houseboat party, just kind of going around, how you doing, how's it going, right? And really talking to people, being very social, going, because Mercury rules Gemini. But it also rules Virgo. That's something to consider, because during this 2 weeks, Leo, Mercury is going to move into its home sign of Virgo, into your second house. And really, that's where you're going to start putting pieces of your actual life together, right? And the second house can be everything from your genetics to your health, to the money in your bank account, to the car in your driveway, right? It can be the land that you live on. It could be the collective energies that you are born into. That's going to be where as much as this is going to be disruptive to this, like, hey, this really kind of like relaxed kind of mental attitude about yourself, it's okay, because Mercury coming into the second, as we're going to see, is where you're going to start taking those pieces and really start organizing your resources, whatever they are, right? As you go through a lunar cycle for 2 weeks, it's going to go through the bottom of your chart, right? And so feeling into, being sensitive to, emotionally identifying with your individual identity and expression. So the real culminating point before the full moon in your seventh house is when the moon meets Pluto in this sixth house. And truly, there is so much power accessible from any Pluto transit, any Pluto aspect, whatever it is. But in your sixth house, it really is in what you do with it. And truly, the sixth house is where we're all challenged the most. And as a Leo person, it is in the being the boss. And it's being the boss and being the performer at the center of the stage are absolutely different things. And this requires that you, as a Leo person, your service is oriented to the crystallization of group effort, the recognition of the fact that we all work together to create something that provides security and provides resources to all of us. There is an aspect of, and Saturn, right? Saturn ruling your sixth house. There's a tremendous amount of power here, but there are things in the there are things in the unseen. There are things in the dream realm. There are things in the collective unconscious. There are things in your karma, your multidimensional experiences, your past lives that are coming up, will continue to come up. And of course, they came up really big, especially when the sun was opposite Pluto on the 20th of July, which is when the moon was in Aries and was in a square to that sun. So up here in your ninth house again, right? Belief system. This is where you tell the story, Leo. And as much as you have wanted to believe that if you just tell the story for everyone else, you won't have to tell your story for yourself. Boy, oh boy, Chiron Retrograde is a painful transit this 6 months around this for all of us, but for you in particular, there is no story to tell until you come into relationship with other. And And that story can be whatever it is, right? And as much as the pain of not feeling like that there is a worthy opposition, a worthy companion, and keeping it all in, like this inner withdrawal, it's going to be less tenable than it has been. And now that Jupiter is stationing at this new moon in the house that Jupiter loves to be in, Jupiter rules this house. I mean, up until this moment, Jupiter has been holding the pattern of meaning that you see yourself within in a very dramatic, big, larger than life type of way. Now it is in Aries, but for you, your spark of who you are is really brought forward in the telling of the narrative, the story, the ninth house, right? And so Jupiter as the representative of the big picture and the larger understanding, I mean, has really been holding this space for you and is about to start deflating like a balloon. So you don't want to forget, as I told my Leo rising spouse, who also has their sun in Taurus, right? Don't forget, keep that picture, right? That concentrated intention on who you are and how you express yourself within the context of these larger pattern of meaning. Don't lose sight of that person, because it's going to be required now to be able to focus on it within and to expand within oneself in this way. And with Chiron, like I said, it's just going to be a lot harder to keep doing that. And Leo, you're eventually going to have to just accept that this square is going to force your hand. But in galactic astrology, for starseeds in particular, and I'm talking about starseeds that are like on mission starseed, and here for this specific purpose, this is keeping us in our lane. All these grand squares will keep us, it's a challenge that's built into the system that we are meant to learn and grow. And through this, we are able to release a lot of the baggage that we are not able to take through the eye of the needle or the lion's gate. And Leo, you really are the rep for this process. You and Aquarius, right? Because this whole lunar cycle and Leo in general is just, like I said, diametrically opposed and inseparable from Aquarius. And with Saturn here, obviously, I mean, there's no getting around that either, right? We have to just go through it and find how this experience really fine-tunes our own, like I said, confidence and structure and power within the collective. And sometimes, a Saturn in the seventh house is so isolating, and you may feel yourself really pulling away. And with Chiron in the ninth like this too, it's been an easier way to kind of bypass the intensity of how this feels. And no more, though. I think we're all going to have this type of experience between Saturn and Chiron in the coming weeks, especially now that they're both in their retrograde. And it's going to be that much more internalized and perhaps even, out of sync or distorted or looking like it's going backwards. So those are like the main themes for Leo. So let's look actually at what's going on play by play here as we move through the next 2 weeks. So there's going to be, as we talk about the fire and this Jupiter in Aries in a fire house for a fire sign, with the sun in a fire sign in the first house, right? All this fire. The sun is going to trine Jupiter actually during this time. So let's start going. I'd like to start going through this on this daily basis. So we have really set the tone here for this new moon. And this grand square, it's not as if it's really letting up anytime soon after this new moon. In fact, this new moon is really meant to give us the opportunity to set the intention and then start to be sensitive to how that has, sensitive to the world around us as the moon comes into Virgo and the second house of Leo. So this grand square is not going anywhere leading up to this 8-1. So we see here on the 31st is when we have this Sun trine Jupiter. We see Venus, in a connection to the moon, in a sextile to the moon, and in a trine to Taurus. But really, it's this Venus square to Chiron, but the Sun in a trine to Jupiter in the ninth house that is really interesting to me, and is kind of coming up to this triple conjunction here in Taurus in the 10th house for Leo. So the Sun is in a trine to Jupiter, and you can't talk about 9 degrees Leo without talking about Antares, and it's also representing the necessity of putting the spirit behind any type of creative outlet for ourselves. It's like blowing glass. Now, Mercury has already passed over this point and made this same trine to Jupiter already. And so now the Sun is like the furnace itself. It's like the heat that is necessary for the spirit to even be able to move through and shape something of form. Again, I think this trine is really going to establish for all of us, but for you in particular, Leo, your ability in who you are to not only hold, but to express the resonance of source and passion and joy and drama and the human condition in a way that is stabilizing what is now more of an inner view of and an inner expansion of the larger meaning, the social meaning. It's the meaning of our relationships that's expressed in the ninth house. And so a lot of this is experienced through a broadening of these things and or the friction that is created in our one-on-one relationships, because the friction is where the catalyzing reaction comes from and transmutation. So the inner experience now is expanding, and this I think really establishes that it starts with you, Leo, and it starts with the brilliance of who you are and the shining forth of you as a person that stabilizes this pattern of meaning that you find yourself within there. And as the pattern of meaning that you had been identified with, maybe going through its own now internalized and review period or more of a contraction, to not forget that it all starts with you being you. And I really find this Sun trine Jupiter anywhere is just really favorable. You have these two energies, like Jupiter is like a star. It is a gas giant planet. It just never activated, at least on this dimension. We can't say for sure, but it's fun to imagine, right? That maybe in a different density, Jupiter is actually a star, but who knows? Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is when these two are in a trine together, even in this retrograde, it's a very blessed moment. And expansive of and really fulfilling and making that brilliance even brighter. So, but I do find this as like this one moment to have that feeling of the fire and the spark within you, so that you realize that as the balloon is deflating, the image that was already carved, drawn on it hasn't gone away. It's just going to look distorted. And this trine, I think, is really important to just find that brilliance within yourself, so it stabilizes the sense of who you are within this larger, within the meaning of your relationships and within these larger, broader perspectives and understandings. So now Venus is in a square to Chiron in this very same area, okay? And so this is where the challenge is coming from, is Venus still pretty much in orb here with Sirius, but is in a square to Chiron in its retrograde. And Chiron is going to be the subject of August's Catalyst Classroom sessions. We're going to look at Chiron in all of its mythology, the astronomy, the astrology, the starseed activation for this position is Tau Ceti. So we're going to go into all of that to get a deeper look, because Chiron will be retrograde and coming back to this point, over the next 6 months or so. So it's important to understand what it really represents. And this moment here, Venus in a square to it, you have to, the seed has to germinate the plant eventually germinates from the seed, but the seed has to kind of open, right? There's this giving or willful surrender of the ego. And I think that that's going to be really challenging at the very same time. So again, remember that it's the full brilliance of who you are as a Leo that is going to stabilize you as you really feel into a much more palpable, much more material, much more inner harmony and spiritual harmony aspect of Venus in the 12th, in a square with Chiron that is still really now the pain that goes along with withholding and just, no, I can do it, right? It only comes from relationship that this 9th house can really fully expand. And Venus is like something from the past, something from your karma, something in the realm of spirit, in the dream state, in your imagination even. Some other, past situations. Maybe it is other versions of you that are now being drawn into this one converging timeline here, this like sacred timeline of where we're going. Maybe it's that much more accessible to you through Venus and a sense of value. There's something that needs to be released. And again, when everything about who you are and how you find yourself is based on this larger pattern of meaning, and that's starting to like either contract or be distorted in some way, or just, fold in on itself, it can be really difficult to maintain that identity. This right here is like, let go, right? Realize that it is the experience of these situations and the releasing them that is allowing your soul to really come forward and grow, so that we all can grow right now. So Leo, important work right now. And this is still just 2 days after the new moon, okay? So we get to the 1st, and we see here that the hits just keep on coming. The moon is in your 2nd house now, so has been highly sensitive to your resources and your health and your body and the physical world around you, and organizing and wanting to be sensitive to their organization, to your astral hygiene in relation to your physical hygiene in relation, right? And the collective energies of the natural world, right? Being sensitive to them, being sensitive to where everything belongs as well. Opposite Pluto or Neptune. All right, Leo. It's not very easy to have Pisces as your 8th house in general. Now, it just shows that there is, the real power that we generate together comes from a surrender to the humanitarian or social, collective, spiritual consciousness. Now, Neptune has been here for a number of years and has made, I think has really led to the Leo person establishing either a total passivity in this realm or being very just surrendering to these beautiful spiritual realizations. Right now in the 8th house, it gets very dark, it goes deep. You're talking about power dynamics. There can be a lot of martyrdom and passivity here. The poor me. The victimhood here is off the charts, potentially. And this is where people really go into those dark escapist places. Now, Neptune in its retrograde has made it even clearer, and the fog is lifted over the delusion, but the intensity of the experience is still very much there. So there's soon to be catharsis, massive catharsis here in this area. And there will be again, right? Neptune's already passed over these late degrees of Pisces. It's the moon in opposition that is like an emotional anchor in terms of what is yours, your physical material reality, to really just take, to emotionally just kind of wield control in that moment, as there may be this dissolution into the power dynamics and the shared resources in whatever relationships you are really focused on right now. Because it is truly Saturn in your seventh. I mean, it really is. There's no way out of this other than through when it comes to who you are in your contractual relationship with life in general. This is not easy, Leo, not at all. But this moon opposite Neptune here on the 1st, as we're having this triple conjunction happening, as Venus is now in a sextile to all of this as well, it is sanctifying it in terms of our spiritual harmony, spiritual value, right? Past situations that have led to our resonance now, especially because Venus rules Taurus, right? This is a really beautiful sanctification, even as disruptive as this is going to be. And there is something about like, hey, at least in your own emotions, your inner self, Leo, to just like, wrest that power within just what is yours so that you can exercise your willpower emotionally in the face of something very possibly very cathartic and very purifying, and it's going to get a lot stronger. And the Sun trine Jupiter is still very active. So as we keep going through the August, now we're here at August. So now we're starting to get into the territory of the Sirius rising and the Lion's Gate. So we've, the moon has moved through the first 3 houses. All right. Mercury has moved into Virgo at this point. There is a sextile at 0 degrees Scorpio with 0 degrees Virgo around this time. And also a first quarter moon in Scorpio, and then we come into the Sirius rising moment on the 5th, the technical Sirius rising. So this is where, Leo, you're going to have a very deep, very powerful, deep sensitivity into your soul's mastery already, currently, and our collective soul's mastery. The moon in the 4th, right? There is a deep, personal inner journey into the soul's history here that is going to not only reveal itself, but is also going to be in a direct square, truly, to this identification with your own self, your subjective experience. It's going to be with Mercury at that 0 degrees of Virgo, as it is in a sextile to the moon. Before this square happens and before the moon meets the south node, where you then, have a personal connection with the soul's collective mastery here, you're going to, it's important that you start really using the mental faculties, the analysis that Mercury and Virgo truly represents. It's important that you start to recognize you in form, right? It's now that you've gone from this mental energy and an expression, right? And a vehicle in which to express yourself either verbally or mentally or in your communication. It's now addressing your resources and specifically to give some sort of form or to give some sort of work in some ways to how you take that expression and start organizing the life, start problem solving about your life, how you can impact the world around you. That's what I'm trying to say. And it's going to be very analytical, and putting things where they belong and really putting your mental energy towards the analysis of, now if the costume is going to be changing, and I realize that relativity of social values is the key of this new moon in terms of identity for the Leo person. It's now Mercury in its home sign of Virgo now that is like, now it's not enough to just express. It is about analyzing the world around you in order to really make the most out of this pure resonance and your identity, who you are as the performer in a lot of ways. And the moon at 0 degrees is there's a sextile, number one, so we know that there's a transmutational moment here where these two elements, and 0 degrees in galactic astrology is like the crack between worlds, right? There is kind of this moment where both in the deep feels and power as well as the mind's analysis they're able to really come together and create something more than what was based on their connection. And 0 degree Scorpio is the tour bus to hell, right? We're on the bus together. We have made intentional decision to widen our experience, and off we go for better or for worse. And this is truly where the Leo finds their personal power, is from this space. And there's a certain amount of commitment, I feel like, that happens with like a no turning back type. You're not getting off the bus now at 0 degrees. And so, but there's a tremendous amount of power from what is gathered from the depth of our generative power together, that the Leo person is like, yep, I'm just going to draw that right up in me and into my field and release it into, it almost is probably in some ways going to be one of the impetus to really move things along in this area. So it will require some precision and analytical organizational thinking about your resources that allows you to maximize your your sensitivity and your emotional power in this way. Whoa, Leo, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like you really are going to it's like that moment in all those superhero movies where I think I talked about this already once, where the protagonist, for whatever reason, is at that all moment is lost, or they are in a moment of really sheer, unadulterated, feels and pain and grief and just like anger, and it all just like, that's when the portal opens within them and they just have power streaming from them that like destroys everything, or makes some sort of massive change in the world around them. I have a feeling, Leo, that this is going to be a big part of this dynamic leading up to the Lion's Gate. So 5/5 is technically the Sirius rising. So this is where Sirius rises just minutes before the sun does. So you can still see Sirius in the dawn sky. And I believe it's about roughly 5:55 a.m. Eastern that Sirius rises on the 5th. So this signaled to the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians at the time, that this was going to be when, this is when the waters would rise. And talk about waters rising through your very root system. Oh my gosh, Leo, at the South Node, again, there is going to be like this opening that you didn't even know existed in your soul, that is going to come through the fields, up through your power center, and just released during this, it is the waters of the Nile starting to flood, and really setting the stage for, growth and fertility and, all those Taurus things that represent the earth providing, and the horn of plenty, right? The cornucopia in a lot of ways. So, boy, oh boy, that is very powerful. And so as we then, pretty much like walking through, getting ready to approach, and we're in this portal now, right? And this portal, I think, got really opened by the Leo people, at least in their own life. And then we come into this trine with, that's actually, if we want to really get technical about it, we'll see that there is a grand fire trine with the sun and the moon in a trine, right? And Chiron, right? This is with, the trine with Chiron and the sun will be exact on the 8/8 Lion's Gate. So it's already starting to lead up to it with this grand fire trine. So all fire signs represented, the sun, the moon, and Chiron in the 9th house. And so with the moon now in Sagittarius for you, Leo, of course, there's a lot of poetic imagination with the moon in the fifth. There's a lot of passion, but a lot of moodiness in the fifth. And when it's in Sagittarius, I mean, there's a lot of self-righteousness and certainly a lot of real honesty and optimism too. That is the, is the catalyzing fire that comes through the creative expression of the Leo person, right? And it's because the pattern of the story comes from Sagittarius. And so there is a sensitive connection not only to the pattern itself, but how easily it's transferred and how there's a dependence that can be generated when society or culture provides this. It's a seamless type of experience, but it also shows that the psyche is going to follow its easiest meal. And what's interesting about this is that it's either the path of least resistance based on the cultural constructs that have already been created, but it's also shows that we psychically and spiritually become dependent on more of the religion and the dogma of Sagittarius if we are, in these early stages of transference. And so perhaps what you're finding is this early stage of transference that is, again, coming from not only this identity in yourself of the storm passing in a lot of ways and really being able to identify yourself as the sun after the storm. It is, the means in which you're able to express this passion or express even this pattern, this new pattern that is really seems to have a lot to do with crossing this gateway, going through the eye of the needle, right? And being able to really express it not for just yourself, but, it's truly in this kind of poetic way that also with Chiron retrograde, it's really going to reinforce this pain because it feels like you can't. I don't see that at all unless you are just absolutely, so overwhelmed by Neptune in your 8th house that there's nothing at this point that's really going to, heal these wounds of the meaning of your relationships. But this, I think, really can. But it's going to, like I said, it's going to come through the walking through this portal. And so when we come to the 8-8, as we are doing right now in this broadcast, this is where Venus is opposite Pluto. This is another Procyon starseed activation. Chiron is in a trine to the sun, right? Exact to the sun. And this is, are we able to establish a steady rhythm and identify with all of the things that we've already done? Especially you, Leo. Your identity is like, I'm like this old sea captain that is rocking back and forth on the porch here and is like, hey, you remember me? And do I remember you? Yes, I do, old friend. Let's see here. I want to make sure. And not only that, but it actually allows the identity in this moment to, it's like you finally be able to realize that the ability to apply yourself to express yourself, your own sense of who you are is important. And there's a certain amount of confidence that just because, the pattern of meaning is changing of your relationships does not necessarily mean that you cannot express who you are in this form of togetherness. And in fact, again, these types of trines, the sun over with Jupiter and Chiron in Aries, I feel like is really establishing for the Leo person that it starts with you. If you are not confident in who you are, if you can't identify yourself as the holder of the solar energy, it's in your identity as that solar brilliant, passionate person that you are, it starts there. And when the pattern of meaning in your relationships shifts based on all kinds of factors, then, your ability to perform and hold that resonance also changes. But when there's been a lot of, I think there's been a lot of betrayal. I think this is where the 12th house for you guys in Cancer is really the most relevant. It's been very difficult to see. It's been something that is in either the background, running in the background, in your unconscious, right? In picking up on the social karma in your past lives, your own multidimensional karma. I think this is where it's coming out, and it's going, again, here's another opposition with Pluto. This time it's Venus, so it's coming right into the sensitivity of value, of meaning, of nurturing, of protection, of harmony and beauty with all of these Venus traits. Boy, oh boy, it's going to come out. You may not even realize where it's coming from, but there may be incredible tears. There may be a physical reaction, right? Or it may just be through relationship in some way that this is brought out again, right? In terms of the real challenge for the Leo person is to go through the Phoenix destructive aspect in order to in order to access that real power of transformation in terms of what you're doing with yourself in this life, right? It's just going to be very pronounced at this Lionsgate, and the Sun trine Chiron again is just going to be like, it never takes away of the fundamental experience of being a spiritual human. And Leo, you really hold this in your identity. I just feel like big identity changes and coming that are through this like deep soul history and propulsion towards a mission or a brand new, a clean slate in terms of your mission or your public or professional life. And again, and this has a lot to do with leaving behind all of these old stories in terms of family and betrayal. There's a lot of that, it feels like. Oh, boy. Betraying one's boundaries, right? There may have been situations where the boundaries were too open because you just desperately wanted or to feel like you belonged. It might have been, especially with Procyon, the other way around, isolationist. Was kept out family, and you may have been kept out. All of these stories have been so important to being able to hold space for the Pluto return of the U.S., but also for you, Leo, the fact that is really challenging. The most difficult house, I think, of the zodiac, honestly, is like the gotta do the work. And the work, the moon's about to come into this after the Lionsgate. So let's wrap up here because we're going to come into this full moon period, and it just keeps on coming, right? So now the sun is coming into a T-square with the nodes as the moon is about to meet Pluto in your 6th house. It is in a square to Chiron, right? Coming into conjunction with the fixed star Vega in the Lyra system. So this is a Lyran starseed activation. It's just making you very sensitive in this moment, Leo, during this time just after the 8-8 Lionsgate. It's going to be like, okay, it's time to get down to work, right? You'll feel it. You'll be sensitive to it. It'll be, maybe it'll be emotional, kind of getting yourself organized, and certainly emotionally taking yourself seriously, so that when the moon crosses Pluto and moves into your 7th house and then comes into this full moon moment, wow. Just as Venus comes into your sign, just remarkable. And realizing that it's a brand new day for you. It's a brand new day for you, and really starting to become very sensitive to the true value of who you are, especially to others, right? The moon coming into the 7th house like this as your full moon, realizing how important it is, how important your relationships really are, and starting to maybe be sensitive to where things are out of balance, where you're not taking responsibility. And I assure you that how close this is to Saturn, it'll be kind of like, ugh, you know what I mean? You'll be like, ugh. it can be kind of a wet blanket. And in some cases, it could be drowning you out and your feelings out with how much Saturn here is just like, dude, this is where it's at. Right here, right? This is your stability, is you in relationship. You don't get any stability or an audience. There's no audience without, there's no you without the audience. And this is becoming very sensitive. And so Leo, there's such a tendency to get caught up. And this is the dark side of Leo, right? To be completely conceited, self-absorbed, narcissistic, truly, from a personality disorder standpoint. And especially because your fifth house is Sag, boy, if you think you're on some sort of like mission, or you are acting out of a dogma or a philosophical belief system, or you are into the social justice thing, boy, oh boy, the Leo is going to be very self-righteous and very judgmental in their own expression. And this could go, you know what I mean? And then you're telling the narrative, right? It's important to consider that as the darkest side of things, but also too, the best case scenario here is realizing that you are, you hold the torch in a lot of ways for us to all take our torch off of, and then we're all holding that torch together. Leo, it's really important that you value yourself. And Venus coming into your sign at this full moon is going to be a great opportunity to really feel into that as you are becoming very sensitive to how important your relationships really are and you in them, right? It's essential. So Leo, I'm going to leave it there for this particular forecast. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you. Leo, thank you for being here just in general. Regulus is the last degree of Leo, right? This is the lion. This is the heart. And Aquarius is the cardiovascular system. Without the heart, there is no cardiovascular system. But without a cardiovascular system, the heart is just sitting there, right? And so it's very easy for Leo to kind of get pulled into, as much as they believe that they are capable of just doing it all themselves. I'm telling you, Chiron and Jupiter here is going to squeeze that right out of you if it hasn't already started crossing your mind at this point, okay? So keep in touch. If you are not subscribed already, you may want to do so that you have the opportunity to check out the live stream event that I and my good friend Kiana from Aurora Creative Healing are doing on the 31st. It is a Lionsgate event, and so we will be streaming on our respective platforms at the same time. So if you're not subscribed here at Catalyst Energies, you can do that. Certainly hit the like button if you find this content helpful. It actually makes a difference. It actually signals to the algorithm to put this content out to a wider audience. So I would really appreciate that if you value this work. And of course, sharing, commenting, all of those things have the same impact. So mark it down, Sunday the 31st, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. We will be doing a event where I do the astrology of the Lionsgate, Sirius rising, looking at the time period between now and the equinox from a general perspective. Kiana's going to be channeling messages and sharing other transmissions of light language and messages that have already been channeled up to this point. It's going to be really very special event, so you don't want to miss that. And that is open to everyone, of course. And since it is the lunar cycle of Leo and Aquarius, the signs associated, Sun, Moon, and Rising, Leo and Aquarius, your lunar transit forecasts are, sale is available to you this month as well. So you go to catalystenergies.net. It's in the description box below. It allows you to book directly from the website, either 30-minute recording, 60-minute recording for your personal natal chart, your progressions, your starseed origins, anything that is relevant, and you get just a beautiful snapshot and a real story about how this lunar cycle is setting you up for growth. And a lot of times that's through, of course, challenges and conflict, but having an idea of what to expect really influences and kind of shapes and practices our own conscious awareness towards our journey and walking it with intention. So that's available for you this month, Leo, as well. So you can book, like I said, from the website. So thank you so much for joining me. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. I'll see you for the next forecast, which will be the Aquarius full moon on August 11th. I'll see you on the live stream on the 31st. Let's get serious and have a great month, Leo. Thank you so much for being here. Like I said, you are surely carrying the torch for all of us. And make sure you tell a Leo thank you today. So that they know that they are very much, that we need to feed their, not ego, but we need, as the audience of the Leo persons in our lives, to let them know that they truly are the light of our lives. And so I am biased because I have a spouse who is a Leo. So I love me and my Leos. So I'll see you guys later. Thank you for being here, as I said, and we'll see you on the next forecast.